Hi folks, and welcome to TK Power Sports. Today I'm down here in the desert in Nevada to test this, the brand new Can-Am Maverick R. This thing is pushing the boundaries when it comes to suspension, power, and the transmission, and I'm going to test it all out and tell you how it handles. Folks, here we go. We're about to take off in the Maverick R. We're going to let that car get ahead of us so I don't run in his dust. And in the meantime, we're going to come over here to drive mode and put it in Sport Plus. You hear the RPMs come up, and that's because right now it's only running on 2 cylinders. The middle cylinder has cut out. It's acting as an air pump to spool up the turbo. So when I take off, there should be absolutely no turbo lag. And then once you put your foot into it, it just goes right back to being a regular turbocharged 3-cylinder. So give it one more minute, and here we go. And it is, it's immediate. There's still, I would say, just a hint of perceptible turbo lag, which is awesome. And then once you're at speed, it's just a regular 3-cylinder. Now when I lift, right now that second cylinder cuts out, so then when I put my foot back into it, the turbo is right there. That's a pretty neat system, and it seems to work pretty well. And I'm sorry guys, I'm not ready for the mud today, so I did avoid the water. Let's go! So we're down here outside of Reno, Nevada. This is actually a part of the Reno to Vegas race course, the best in the desert race. So we're on some real high-speed desert running trails, and that's where this thing belongs. Can-Am told us straight up they designed this for the desert, for wide open spaces. You can still buy it on the East Coast or back home in Canada, but this thing is going to feel massive back there, whereas here it feels perfect. And the 77-inch width, it just makes it feel so stable. I've been able to step out the back end real easy, kind of drifter around corners, and the low center of gravity combined with that width, this thing just feels like it never would want to roll over. I'm sure if you worked hard enough you could get it to go, but honestly it just feels so solid on its feet. Well, Luke, thanks so much for having me down here today to ride your new machine. This thing is amazing. The first question I have, and the first question everyone seems to have, is about this suspension because it doesn't look like anything we've ever seen on a side-by-side before. So why? Why is the question? Why did you go with this tall knuckle suspension? What are the advantages?
Yeah, well, first of all, we looked at all the suspension that were out there, and they were basically all the same. Even us, you know, with our Mavic X3, you have the lower control arm, upper control arm going into the wheel, and you're packaged very, very tightly because the rims, you know, usually they're 14, 15, and some of them are 16-inch now.
Sure.
But you're working on a very, very tight package. So we said, okay, what if we want to hold the wheel when it's going to get, because the wheel is getting beat up from the front, from the side, even from the interior.
Sure.
How can we just hold everything together? So I always take the example of a broomstick. If I put my hands really close from one to another, and let's say the broomstick, and I hit the broomstick, and I'm trying to hold the broom from, you know, shaking, it's going to be hard because my hands are so close together. So we said, okay, what about if we just go down as much as we can and up but over the wheel, so the lever is going to be way better. So when it's going to get the impact from whatever the direction, I'm just going to hold the package very, very in a better way than being tucked in the wheel.
Gotcha.
And furthermore, the load that are going through the lower A-arms and the upper A-arm with a suspension system like this is way lower than a conventional. You can reduce the top A-arm load by 50 to 70% if you do it right, and the bottom at least 10%.
Okay.
So the overall package is just very, very solid. And one of the big advantage of doing so is the steering feedback will be way less because the impacts are just coming from all over the place. They are being transmitted through the tie rod, rack and pinion, and up to the steering. But if you can hold the wheel more strongly, well, the steering feedback will be way, way less.
Sure.
And another thing that you can achieve with a system like this is a very short spindle length, we call it. The spindle length is, if you draw a line from the top ball joint to the lower ball joint, and you draw another line with the center of the wheel, there on this car, it's 10 millimeter.
Wow, okay.
So when you do this, you just gain stability.
Interesting.
So this is the main reason that we did.
So I mean, obviously the driving dynamics, but then it sounds like the longevity too, because all those forces are reduced, so it should just be easier on the parts, right?
Absolutely. The loads are lower, even at the frame, because these arms are bolted to the frame.
Yeah.
So if they see less load, well, the frame sees less load.
Yeah.
And you don't
Better
have to build a frame for a tank, so you just keep the weight down.
Gotcha.
Because
now the other thing that's immediately apparent to me is, look, we're doing 58, 60 miles an hour down this rutted, rocky road. And honestly, it's easy. And I think a lot of that has to do with the front suspension. Those front tires are just being held so well in place. And the camber is staying so dead on that all of the shock that you'd normally get from things that would hit the face of the tire, so straight on hits, it's just gone. There's no more shock that comes through to your hands. In the corners, when you're actually kind of hitting on the sidewall, then yeah, you can sort of feel the steering feedback. But I think that the biggest advantage of this suspension, besides the travel, of course, is just the fact that the car just wants to go straight. It just wants to dial in and go dead straight, which is pretty amazing. Now, there's 3 different modes for the power steering. In max, I think it's a little over boosted. You get 0 feedback in your hand. I prefer minimum. Minimum, you gotta get a bit more weight, so a bit more feel. But still, it's so easy to be able to come out here and run at these kind of speeds thanks to this suspension. And if you do come into something a little too hot, 9 times out of 10, it'll still take care of you. I've only had once or twice today where I hit pretty big. And the majority of the time when I think I'm going to hit big, I just don't. The suspension just eats it up and it's still good to go. And it probably goes without saying, but 240 horsepower feels amazing. The power to weight ratio is still pretty good. This thing does weigh 2,200 pounds, a little bit more. So it's not a lightweight machine because look how big it is. But the power is there, so the weight of the machine, you don't really feel it in the power delivery at all. Another thing I really like about that tall knuckle is that I can see it. And as you hit big obstacles, you see those knuckles come way up high, and it actually kind of gives you a visual sense for how fast you're going and how hard you're hitting things. I do really like all the drive modes here too. So if you go to drive mode, you have normal, sport, and sport plus. But then you can also go in and change all the parameters individually. So I can adjust my suspension, my steering, my locker, and my engine drive mode. So you can really set this thing up the way you like it. And then of course, there's also a custom setting. So once you've dialed it in the way you like, you just hit the custom button, and then boom, you're good to go. It'll set up all those things exactly the way you want them. So the ease at which I can do this has been very apparent. And then the other thing that's been also quite apparent to me, I constantly keep looking down at my speedometer going, I'm doing 50? I'm doing 60? The speed just doesn't translate into the cab. And honestly, I think that's a result of good engineering and the fact that the suspension and the steering really isolate you from just how rough it is outside. So yeah, I just keep finding myself looking down and being surprised at how fast I'm actually moving. Ergonomically, I fit fairly well in here. I stand at 6'2", 300 pounds. I have just enough room for my arm, lots of knee room. My only complaint is how far back this seat is reclined. Can-Am really wants to get you into that kind of F1 driver seating position where you're kind of laying down a little bit. And I don't like it that much. I find myself kind of sitting forward naturally because I don't want to lean all the way back. Plus, because I'm tall, when I lean back, I end up hitting the roll cage up here with my helmet. So, yeah, I wish the seat was a little bit more straight up and down. I don't want it vertical, but I don't want it this far reclined either. Although, for the most part, ergonomics are good. You sit nice and deep in this vehicle. Visibility forward and to the side is quite good. I can see my tires, I can see my nose. Visibility at the back, though, is not very good. I have the air intake right here beside me, so that kind of blocks my view. And then even with the mirror, the air intake takes up most of the mirror's view. So, yeah, looking at the back can be a little challenging. I'd recommend getting the side view mirrors as well. Oh yeah, and another thing I want to comment on, it's not that loud. I was expecting it, honestly, to be a lot louder, but after doing 100 miles almost today, my ears are not bothered whatsoever. So, also really impressed with how quiet the new powertrain is. We can look at the interior quick. Another thing I like on the Maverick R, the steering wheel's got a nice shape to it, and then they actually put some controls here. So I can use this, hopefully you can see it clearly enough, the OK switch, and that'll adjust things over here on the screen. And then you can also use this gear, and that'll change your drive mode over here. So nice to be able to do that on the fly while you're driving, because there's so many different modes here, so many different things to change. You don't want to be looking down here while you're on the move, so you just grab that button right there, and you can do things mostly not distracted. Now, I will make the point that, yes, we are at the age of 10-inch touchscreens and side-by-sides. Frankly, I don't think we need more distractions in these machines just because they're such high performance, and you just really need to be paying attention and driving this thing. But all that being said, I do like the navigation here. It's a nice, clean-looking screen. It's nice to have the cameras at slow speeds when you're moving around a parking lot or something like that. So this one's a little bit tough for me. I like that we have a new touchscreen here in the Maverick R, and it's really nice looking, really has some great functionality. But, yeah, I just don't know. I hope this is it. We don't need to keep going with more and more screens and distractions in our side-by-sides. It's one thing's in our trucks and cars and SUVs, but this machine is meant to be focused on what you're doing. So I don't want any more distractions. So I showed you Sport Plus a little bit earlier. Now I'm just running here in Sport mode. And the biggest difference in Sport mode to normal is the throttle response has changed, and then the shift points are changed. The DCT will now shift at 8,500 RPM, which is what you want. You want it to hold on to those RPMs to make sure you're getting maximum power. And yeah, let's talk about the DCT. So 7-speed, dual clutch transmission, and the whole idea behind a dual clutch is that the shifts should be so quick, they're nearly imperceptible, and that's exactly what this Maverick R is like. It's honestly hard to tell when it's shifting. The engineers actually said that they didn't initially have the gear readout on the screen, but then they realized that you don't know what gear you're in because the shifts are happening so quickly and so seamlessly. So now I have a little readout right down here. Right now I'm in 5th, and it'll always tell you what gear you're in, which is nice. Now I do have paddle shifters. If I'm on the move and I just grab a paddle, it'll use it. It'll go up into 6. But then the nice thing is, if I just don't touch the paddles again, it'll just go back into regular automatic. So you're able to, coming into a corner, maybe grab a downshift if you want some more power, or cruising like this. If you don't want the high RPMs, you can grab an upshift. And then when you don't want to shift anymore, just don't. And it'll go back to normal, which is cool. Now there is a full manual mode, and if you put it in manual mode, it will not shift up for you at all. It'll just hit the rev limiter. It will shift down for you automatically, and that's essentially an anti-stall thing. If it didn't shift for you down, it could stall out.
Well, JJ, thanks for having me down here to ride this machine. It's been a great day. I think the first question I have for you is, Maverick R is something brand new from the ground up. This is not just an X3 that's modified. So tell me who this customer is as compared to a Maverick X3 customer. Sort of where is this going to fall in the marketplace?
Yeah, definitely, Stephen. It was great riding with you today here in Nevada. So in 2017, when we launched the Maverick X3, it was really dedicated towards that trail, desert, dune, and rock crawler customer. What we saw over the years is that that X3, so Maverick X3 XRS customer, a lot of those customers were always asking for more power, more suspension travel, faster acceleration. So we were able to increase the power over the last few years. So we went from 154 to 172 to 195 to 200 horsepower. All this on the same platform, but we got to a point where we had to beef it up. It's like a step at a certain point. If you want to add horsepower,
sure,
you have to go that extra step. So the Maverick R is that vehicle for that customer it's really developed towards open riding type. So when you're thinking about desert riding, dune riding, rock crawling, so just those people out there that are riding for long days at a time and just that high enthusiast.
Sure. And I think you said it there, but just to kind of elaborate on it, very much a desert, kind of Southwest machine, right? Although it is for sale everywhere, right? If you want to buy one in Canada or on the East Coast, you can. But just because of the width, I think it's much more desert focused, right?
Yeah, totally. And the other thing is this vehicle really comes alive around 80 kilometers an hour, which would probably be 45, 50 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And that's really where the vehicle comes alive. And the biggest differentiation with the Maverick X3 happens at that level, and this is done through a whole series of new technologies that are industry leading that we put in this vehicle.
So what do you identify as the major competitors for this?
So the major competitor for the Maverick R would be the Razor Pro R.
Okay.
So the Pro R also it's a wide car that's really designated and built for that desert type of environment. But we were able to push it to the next level with this new Maverick R.
Gotcha. And then finally, if you can just talk me through the trim walk, the 4 different models, and then the price ranges in Canadian and US.
Yes, so the trim, so we start with the base model. That is, so on the base model, you get all the features and performance that are included on the Maverick R. So that is the horsepower, so the 240 horsepower. You get the DCT transmission. You get the tall knuckle heavy duty suspension. You'll get the premium new premium doors, very aggressive design, like a badass design on the vehicle. Now, if you upgrade to an X package, you get a premium coloration. You're going to get the infotainment system, so a lot of people are asking for that, especially when you're going out riding in the trails and the desert. You want to have some reference points and be able to see your friends riding with you. The other thing is, so on that X, we added a roof on it. There's a 4-point harness that's also included.
Gotcha, okay.
And then when you move on to the next trim would be the XRS. So XRS is such as this vehicle that's here. XRS is available in 2 colors, so this bright racing team coloration that our team has been winning a whole bunch of podiums over the last years. So that was at Best in the Desert, Baja, King of the Hammer, Dakar. So
nice.
That's why we chose this color for year 1. So the XRS is available 2 colors, this coloration here and triple black. That's one of our best sellers for the last 6-7 years on the X3. So we thought we're going to stick to that. Price range starts in USD, so from 35 to about 44,000 USD is about that range. And then in Canada, that would be 44,000 to 55,000 Canadian dollars. We've been getting a lot of questions are, what's going to happen with X3? What's a position for this Maverick R?
Sure.
Both are going to continue to coexist. In those markets where we're limited to 64 inches wide, that X3 is just going to be perfect. So the DS, the XDS, we have also a XMR and a XRC version in those markets. But definitely the customer that's going to be buying this Maverick R is going to be a big enthusiast that is looking just for the best product out there.
Gotcha.
So now let me talk about what's the difference between this and a Maverick X3. And I could go into a lot of details, but I'll try to keep it real simple for you. The Maverick X3 is also a pretty incredible side-by-side, but you can find its limit. And it's pretty high, you do have to push it pretty hard, but you can find its limit. Not to mention, that machine doesn't have the best reputation for being durable. I know a lot of guys who love Maverick X3s when they're brand new, but they say they just don't hold up well on the trail. Well, this Maverick R, the limits of this thing are insane, way beyond my own limits. I can tell you that right now. This feels like a purpose-built buggy. And I actually talked to Phil Blurton, who's an off-road racer. He's here with us today. And he said that his race-prepped Maverick X3 was slower than a stock Maverick R. So that tells you right there how much performance has been gained with this new model. So another interesting thing I can show you right here, what you're looking at, that's actually an air intake. There are 3 different radiators on this machine. You get one up front, which is engine cooling. You get this guy right here, which I believe is transmission cooling. And then you also get an intercooler for the turbo. So there's 3 separate radiators on this machine to make sure you get enough cooling. And what's really interesting is, of course, you can buy a full windshield for this machine from the accessories catalog. So when you do that, you block this air intake. Well, Can-Am has a solution. It's a roof scoop. They will actually sell you a roof which has an air intake built into it, and that thing is going to feed nice, clean air from up high down, I believe, once again, to your transmission. But still, really smart solution. Because a lot of people would like a windshield, and even a little half windshield or 3/4 windshield, it'll end up taking away a bit of performance. And the hood scoop, frankly, looks pretty cool too. So I thought that was interesting. Now, another really neat feature is the low range on this machine. You can do it change to low on the fly. So check it out. I'm in 3rd gear. I'm going to hit the low button. And the machine just slammed me up into 6th gear right away, but the speed actually stayed the same, and now my RPM start to go up. So essentially, what it does is you hit it into low, it will put it into the appropriate gear to keep your speed the same, but then it'll switch over to low range. Now I'm moving at 42, I'm going to take low off. It just downshifted from 6th to 4th, and now I'm in high range. That's honestly amazing. No more stopping to switch from low to high, no more rocking it, anything like that. This machine will do it on the fly at full speed. Now, if I was to go, let's say 80 miles an hour and stick it into low, no, it's not going to jam itself in. It will wait until the speed comes down and the conditions are met to be able to switch into low range. So you don't have to worry. They did make sure it's mostly stupid proof, so you can't just shove it in low when you're flying along. But I just love the fact that, let's say you're on a trail in Moab and you're rock crawling, and then it opens up for a section. Well, you no longer have to stop, switch out of low. You can just do it on the fly, and I think that's really a smart decision and some really neat engineering. Now, if you do want me to complain about one thing, it's the price. Of course, we're getting a new level of performance out of this machine. You cannot deny how good it is, because it truly is amazing. But is it, $45,000, $50,000 amazing? One of the Can-Am guys actually told me that a gentleman in Quebec City already ordered a model. He put every single accessory on it that he could, and the out-the-door price was $90,000 Canadian. So yeah, for 90 grand, and like I said, even for 40 or 50, it is hard for me to come on here and say that it's worth the money. It is definitely, though, an incredible amount of performance. And I guess the point here is, I'll say, is if you do have the money and you can afford it, I don't think you'll ever, ever be disappointed. And I don't think you're going to get bored of this thing or find its limits anytime soon.
Well, folks, we have come to the end of this video. Now, you saw the performance. This Maverick R truly is setting a new standard for performance side-by-sides, and I had a blast out here testing it. But now, of course, I need to hear from you, so please go into the comments. Let me know what you think of everything to do with this Maverick R, because I want to hear about it. As always, while you're down below, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, hit join to become a member of our channel, and then come right back here to TK Power Sports to see what we're testing next. See ya.